Zach Laws of Gold Derby here with Jill Ohanneson. She's the costume designer of Apple TV Plus's new series For All Mankind. And Jill, this is a show that obviously it just premiered. It's one of Apple TV's flagship programs. So for people who haven't seen it, just talk a little bit about the show and what about it made you want to be a part of it.
Well, the basic premise of the show is, what if we had not landed on the moon first? In 68. What if the Russians had gotten there before us? And would that have motivated, challenged, inspired us to do more as a country than we ended up doing with the moon? And, there had been talk originally about putting a lunar base there. There had been talk about, having people live there. None of that actually ended up happening due to politics, changing of political parties and et cetera. And so we thought, let's take a look at that and see what that would have done. What would the ripple effect of that have been? How would it have affected culture, politics, design, all those things that are affected by what happens in the world. Art as reality and reality as art. And I have to say that what originally attracted me to the project, number one, was that I had worked with Ron Moore many years ago on the TV series Roswell. And I'm also very good friends with his wife. And when I heard about this project, it was very interesting. Number one, it was 60s and 70s. Number two, it was space, NASA, all of that. That's always been fascinating to me. And so it was a really great kind of fit for me. So I put together a presentation for my interview, and I was actually working in New Orleans at the time. So I sent my presentation over, and we basically had a big Skype interview. I think there were 6 of us.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Ron Moore. He's certainly a very creative individual, Battlestar Galactica, Outlander, all those great programs. What's it like working with him? What is that collaboration between the two of you like?
Well, one of the best things about working with Ron is that he is an incredible collaborator. He really appreciates and supports his crew and, basically talks about what he wants the show to look like, along with, the other 2 creators, Ben Nadivi and Matt Wolpert. And then basically, they let us kind of do our job, which is really amazing. And with research and gathering together, lots of sources and then kind of, showing everything, I felt we really had their trust and support. And that means a huge amount for us when we're trying to do a big period show and we're trying to do a big space show. So basically we're kind of doing 2 shows at the same time. And I think that Ron understands in a really lovely way that I can function as a part of the storytelling of the project by how I dress the characters, color choices, pattern choices, texture, things like that can all set the mood when you first see the actor. Are they depressed? Are they happy? Are they rich? Are they poor? Do their clothes fit them properly? All those things help inform the audience what's going on with the actor. What's going on with the character at the time. And sometimes what's happened in their past, what's going on with them now, and oftentimes what's going to be happening in the future.
Right. I mean, he's very good at taking these sort of high concept ideas and grounding them in character, and drama. So you mentioned the fact that, this is like both a space show and a period show. Yes. How did you work to combine those 2 elements into your design work?
Well, actually, I kind of felt like it was 2 worlds. So I really wanted there to be a different feeling visually to those 2 worlds. So what we did for first season is I came up with the idea that for NASA, I wanted the color palette to be more kind of grays and navies and kind of cooler tones, jewel tones, in addition to the navies and the grays and the blacks. And then when we're in the home and outside of NASA, in the homes of the astronauts, then we had a much warmer palette, beiges, rusts, oranges, ochre yellows, tans, browns, greens, things like that, so that you felt the kind of almost scientific, very technical world that feels cooler and crisper and very just very clean, and it's always everything's always together, always in a row, everything's very orderly. And we're out in the real world, not everything is always so orderly. So we liked the kind of warmer tones and earth tones for that. And I think it worked very nicely.
Considering that this show presents an alternate vision of reality and history, how much was your work based in research and how much of it was, like fantastical imagining your own?
Well, because we knew that we were going to be entering a new version of events, new idea of what happened, we wanted to initially start incredibly grounded and really have everything be as close as possible to what it was and what it would have been. So we really felt strongly that we particularly in the costume department, we didn't want to branch out too much into what the ripple effects would have been. I think Ron wanted to start, some of those ripples being more in technology and those kinds of things that would have been particularly important for NASA in moving forward on some of these new ideas. So in the first season, we definitely stayed really true to what was real and what was going on at the time. And we, we're playing around with it a little bit more now in season 2. So we'll see how that works out.
You mentioned, basing your work in character. So I did want to touch upon that a little bit and how these different people affected your designs.
Well, the writing is so wonderful and amazing, and the characters are beautifully fleshed out. So we have a very good sense on the page of what these characters are like. Are they, open and free? Are they uptight and repressed? Are they angry? Are they happy? Are they sad? All those things. So then it becomes my job to help tell that story, so that it's not just what they're saying and what their body movement, but also how they got dressed in the morning, and when we're not feeling good or when we're feeling angry in the morning, it often comes through in how we dress. So that was basically what we wanted to do as well. And there were there were characters who, for instance, Karen was very much, her idea of what a housewife was very, very important to her. So it was important that she always looked perfect, from head to toe, always earrings, always just just everything pressed, everything perfect. There were some other characters. For instance, we see Margot getting dressed, and she's just a little bit, she looks put together when she is put together, but her way of kind of making all of that happen is a little bit more, lackadaisical. So each character had their own journey, and I really love to start with where did that person come from? Where did they grow up? What was their economic background? What kind of schooling did they have? What kind of support did they have from family? And then kind of go from there. And I tried to really do a color palette for each character and then decide, who was going to have texture and pattern, or who was going to have all solids and not a lot of color. So, to help tell those little bit of stories. And one of the things I have always loved about doing television versus features is the longer form of storytelling. With a feature, I tell one story for an hour and a half, but when I'm doing television, I get to continue to watch these characters grow and change by what's happening around them. And that was particularly fun with this project because there were a lot of changes that affected people emotionally as well as physically.
Well, could you point to maybe an example of that in this show, some of those changes that happened in the first season?
Absolutely. We basically start, I'm going to bring up Karen again because she is really kind of so put together and almost a little rigid when we first meet her. And then she does go through some changes. I can't quite say because I know
Right.
not all of the episodes are out yet. But by the time you get to the end of the season, she really has changed because the foundation of who she is and her family has really changed. And so I needed to be able to reflect that in what she was wearing, again, with color, pattern, and texture. And then also, here's another great way to describe that. So let's think of the women that were initially asked to be astronaut candidates. And these are the first women who are really going to be taken seriously, they think, in NASA. And so it was important to me to kind of show how they were changing. So as we went along in their training, we started to put some of them in pants more often, particularly Tracy. Initially we saw her always in dresses and skirts, but she started to wear more pants. We started to see that tom girl part of her that made her love flying. And the same with some of the other characters, some of the other women, is we started to see, oh my God, I don't just have to be this idea of what society thinks a woman should be. I can actually be this as well. I can be an astronaut as well. So bringing that element into how they dress was really interesting and really fun.
I certainly look forward to seeing how that develops as more episodes of the show start to come out. You've gotten multiple Emmy nominations for your work on 6 Feet Under and Citizen Cone. What does that recognition mean for you?
It basically means to me that it's really the recognition of my peers, and I am so grateful to be honored by them. I mean, I feel like, other costume designers, other, people in the industry know what it takes to put together a period piece or, a contemporary drama where the costumes need to be right, but also not interfere at all in the emotions of the script and what the actors are saying and doing. So, I just really appreciate the support and the acknowledgement of my peers, and it just keeps making me continue to want to do the best work I can do.
And what are you working on now? I mean, besides more episodes of this, anything you can tell us about?
No, I personally choose to only work on one project at a time because particularly on a show like this, where again, we're doing space and we're doing a period show, it's better for me if I can really be present to my crew who's trying to put everything together, to my producers, my writers, my actors. So, if I were doing, I don't know, maybe a hospital drama and also a lawyer drama at the same time, that's something I feel like I could do, both at the same time. But personally, I choose to, commit to one project at a time and really give it my all.
Well, from evidence from the episodes we've seen so far, sorry, I can't talk. You've certainly given this your all. Jill, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time and have a lovely day.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.
You too.